Hey guys, how's it going? So I just wanted to take a minute to make this video to just say thank you. There are over 4,000 of you who have clicked that subscribe button and subscribed to this. I don't know why you chose to subscribe to this, but I thank you. I know I said that exact phrase in my last video where I addressed like the first 200 of you. Now I'm addressing the first 4,000 of you, which is insane. I had no idea that this would happen this quickly, but I just want to take this moment to humbly say thank you. There are very few things in life that truly leave me speechless, and going from 0 subscribers to 4,000 in such a short amount of time is certainly one of them. I'm blown away. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. So I figured let's have some fun with this and give you guys a chance to get to know me on a more personal level, because all you see from me on YouTube is either a humble, nice sound guy that works at a music venue, or, depending on who you ask, a gigantic tool bag that shouldn't even be near an audio console. Again, depending on who you ask. I try to take whatever criticisms you guys give me and apply to my future videos. So thank you guys for being kind with your criticism. And to those of you who just want to flame, thanks for the entertainment. It's awesome. So I figured, why not celebrate this 4,000 subscriber milestone than by giving you guys a more personal video so you can get to know me on a more personal level versus just knowing me as a YouTube sound guy. 36, male, Woodbridge, New Jersey. My girlfriend and I will be moving to the greater Trenton area in about a month. So in the middle of June, I'll be out of Woodbridge and we will be in the greater Trenton area. I mean, my top 3 are always going to be the same. So Goodfellas is my number 1. It will always be my number 1. Aliens will always be my number 2. I mean, I named my Mustang Ripley for a reason. I'm obsessed with that movie. And one of the very rare times where the sequel to me is far superior to the original in every way, although some fans of the original Alien who are more horror movie fans, and that was more of a horror movie than an action movie, but we can discuss movies in the comment section. Number 3 is Interstellar. And I remember going to see that movie in IMAX when it first came out and just being so blown away by what Chris Nolan as a director can do, that I know if I ever get asked to be a cameraman for a movie, or my friends actually want me to direct a movie for them, and I am going to be behind the camera thinking, the only thing me and Chris Nolan have in common is we both have the same first name. He is next level of a director, and I love everything that man does. I'm a total Nolan fanboy. My number 4 and 5 vary, but I'll just name my other 3 favorites that I would always watch time and time again. Office Space is definitely one of them. I'm a sucker for dry humor, and that is probably one of the most quotable movies of all time. I can recite the entire movie if I wanted to. It probably is realistically my number 4, and that's Apollo 13. I love Tom Hanks as an actor. I love Ron Howard as a director. As you see in sort of the themes of my favorite movies, I love space movies. I love any science fiction that goes into outer space. I love anything involving space travel. Although Apollo 13 is not a science fiction movie, it's based on a real NASA disaster, but I love that movie for how it's shot. I love the music. I love the actors. I love the cast in that movie. That is a banger cast list of people in that movie, and the main 3 cast with Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, and Kevin Bacon, it's such a fantastic movie. I love it. And another one that is a sleeper on my list that sometimes gets on my top 5, Ford v Ferrari. I know it's relatively new, came out a couple of years ago, but I love going to car shows. I love learning about automotive history, and the Ford GT40 is one of the greatest stories in automotive history. The entire story of how that car came into production and how Ford beat Ferrari at Le Mans in the 60s when Ferrari was dominant at that race, and in the world of motorsports and racing in general. The story of how Ken Miles got screwed in the end where he should have won the race, but because he slowed down and Ford got that photo finish with the 3 GT40s on it, Ken Miles technically lost by only a couple of feet and he got screwed out of the first place trophy. Great acting, fantastic cinematography. It's probably my favorite movie that has car filming in it, and if only any other car movie has an ounce of quality that Ford v Ferrari has as far as cinematography, sound design, and how you're supposed to film cars, car movies would be so much better than whatever crappy Fast and Furious movies are out. Those movies are hot garbage. No, I'm sorry. The first Fast and Furious movie is good if you just realize that it's Point Break with cars. This is tricky. I don't know if I can honestly name a top 5 bands. I could tell you that when I was a kid growing up, all I would listen to is video game and movie scores. So I didn't really listen to what a lot of people would call like modern music. I didn't really listen to a lot of music as a kid, but the first band that introduced me to any type of music and the first band that I actually got into was Green Day. I listened to Dookie like everyone else did in the early 90s when it came out, and I was blown away by what I listened to. I eventually discovered The Offspring because of that. I discovered Rancid, I discovered the Ramones, and then I discovered heavy metal from that. I discovered Black Sabbath, Metallica, Anthrax, the Big Four, obviously, with Slayer and Megadeth too. And I went back and back, and then my mother listened to the Beatles a lot, so it all started because of Green Day. So if I have to put a favorite all-time band on there, probably Green Day's number 1 for me. The Beatles, specifically George Harrison's songs of the Beatles. I think if you were to classify the Beatles, Paul was the showman, John Lennon was the artist, George Harrison was the musician, and Ringo was there. I'm kidding. Ringo is a fantastic drummer, and he has the ability to have very simple patterns in his drum kit, but they are so finesse and they are so precise. You have to be able to play that perfectly in order for it to work. So give Ringo credit where credit's due. I'd probably put Led Zeppelin on that list too. I mean, drumming, modern drumming as a whole starts with John Bonham and how he played that drum kit. I mean, ask any modern drummer today, they'll put John Bonham as the reason why they play drums in the first place. Who's definitely on my top 5? Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains, I would put Alice in Chains over Nirvana as far as grunge goes, because Alice in Chains Alice in Chains is one of the rare bands that never had a bad album, and every single one of them sounds amazing. Especially that I think it was the first or second album that they released post Lane Staley, The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. That album, specifically the song Stone, that is the best bass tone I have ever heard, ever. If I can ever capture that bass tone, personally, I'd be done. Like, I would never record another bass again because I would never top that. That is the pinnacle of bass tones to me. The way that song starts, and you hear that, you hear the banging drums that sound fantastic, but then it's that bass. It is all about that bass, no treble. The way that the guitars just come into, like, the way that it just meshes together, it just, oh, I love that song. I love that album, but that song is just, mwah. Okay, definitely on my top 5. Fleetwood Mac. And by the way, for any of you Taylor Swift fans out there, yeah, Taylor Swift may write songs about ex-boyfriends, but Stevie Nicks not only writes songs about her ex-boyfriend, she makes her ex-boyfriend sing harmonies with her and looks directly in his eye as she's singing the chorus about him, looking directly into his eye, and he's stuck there having to sing harmony while she's looking at him right in the middle of the stage. Taylor needs to step her game up because Stevie Nicks, that's how you do breakup songs. And Rumors also has my all-time favorite song on it, The Chain. It's that song. If I were to make a list of the top 5 or 10 perfect songs to me. The Chain is number one. It will always be my all-time favorite, and there is not a single song that will instantly get me in a mood, in a happy mood. If I'm in my car, it will make my foot turn into lead, and I will guarantee get a speeding ticket when that song comes on, especially when that famous bass line comes in and it just picks up into Lindsey Buckingham's guitar solo. That is just perfection. That's my favorite song, and it's probably my favorite album too. Needless to say, if you go through my music library, you'll see everything from, like I said, Green Day, punk rock, and a bunch of old school 80s and 90s, 70s heavy metal. My dad sings bass in an a cappella group, and they cover oldies music, so all of the doo-wop and Motown artists from the 50s, 60s. But in general, my music taste varies from mood to mood. Punk rock was my first love because I've always been sort of the, like, rebellious type of kid. I was always an outcast, so punk rock and the punk rock lyrics and that vibe always sit well with me because I was an outcast growing up. I never really belonged to any social group. I'll go from punk rock to listening to oldies, and just a perfect summer day is a top down in the Mustang, driving along the Jersey Shore, listening to my Solid Gold oldies playlist, especially with some Sinatra, some Elvis. I will listen to that all day, every day. I love that stuff. And if I want to sit home and chill with some herbal influences, I'll put on Bob Marley, some reggae, some yacht rock. I mean, Hall & Oates I read from the Gospel of Hall & Oates, and if you don't subscribe to the Gospel of Hall & Oates, I can't go for that. That was a pun. Bad pun. This is a very easy question because the best concert I will ever see in my life is when I got to see Paul McCartney. I got to see a living Beatle perform live, and the tickets were insanely expensive, and we were up at the very, very top of the arena, like almost right at the very back of the wall, so we were all the way up there. But I don't care. I got to see Paul McCartney perform. Nothing will ever top that. To me, there is a difference between a concert and a show. A concert is when I see real musicians play, and I'm not saying shows aren't real musicians. You have to play instruments, so you have to be musically inclined to play. I mean, unless if you're Motley Crue these days, in which case you're allegedly playing to backing tracks the whole show. But to me, I subscribe to the theory that there is a difference between a concert and a show, and the perfect explanation of that is Paul McCartney is the best concert I will ever see. Rammstein is the best show I will ever see. And especially when they perform the song Mein Tai, I definitely mispronounced that, and I didn't pronounce it properly. When they perform that song live, he literally cooks. It's about cannibalism, so yay, fun, cannibalism. He cooks the keyboard player, who is in a gigantic pot, till comes out in a bloody chef outfit, and he blasts a cauldron with a flamethrower and cooks his keyboard player. Fun! The Germans. They're crazy. I've seen Rammstein twice, and nothing will ever top that show as far as, first off, the size of the stage, which is insane, but also just how happy I am when I saw that show. It's just, nothing tops that to me. So, yes, best concert, Paul McCartney. Best show, Rammstein. The best moment actually happened just a couple of weeks ago. Ace Frehley came into the club, and he was there that night with his buddy, who is a frequent performer there. Ace just happened to be in the area, and his buddy invited him to come to the club to check out a local band that was performing that night. Ace was interested in the band. So Ace came up. I knew he was behind me as I was doing my thing with the headliner, and I was nervous as hell because standing behind me was arguably one of the greatest rock guitar players of all time, and just, he's a very high-profile person to be in that club. And needless to say, I'm nervous. Like, I don't get starstruck that easily, but I was pretty nervous with Ace behind me. He stood there for about 3 songs and tapped me on the shoulder, shook my hand, gave me a thumbs up and said, "They sound nice." And he gave me a thumbs up to say, "Hey, you did good with the mix." Night made. Year made. Life made. Ace Frehley commented on my sound mixing, and he liked it. So Nothing will top that. When I'm not doing sound at the music venue, by day, I am a real estate photographer. I go to several listings a day throughout all of New Jersey, and I photograph on average 5 to 7 listings a week, at least now in the spring. In the summertime, I do 3 to 4 listings a day. That's what pays the bills. That's what pays for the roof over my head. That's what pays for everything. In a previous lifetime, about like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, I worked at SiriusXM. I worked there from 2014 to 2019. One of the best stories was when I was an intern there, and it's right when Nirvana was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Dave Grohl, Chris Novoselic, and Butch Vig came into the studio to be interviewed. And it was one of the rare moments where I got really starstruck because, again, this is like Foo Fighters, Nirvana, and the guy who not only like produced the Foo Fighters, at least 2 of their albums, he produced Nevermind. And then there's Chris Novoselic, that like the bass player from Nirvana. Like, they are in the studio, and I'm just like, as an intern, I'm getting the water bottles like set up so they can drink during the interview, and they were sitting there getting ready to go on the air or film what Sirius calls a town hall, where they sit in the giant fishbowl, they call it, and they have an audience coming in for the interview. So Dave, Butch, and Chris were sitting there, and I was shaking because I'm an intern. I'm green. I don't want to screw up, but I also like, oh my God, like, look who's sitting here. And Dave Grohl just looks at me and gives me like a cute little smile and just goes like, don't be nervous. We're only going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's nothing to worry about. Just shrug it off. Of course, he was joking with me, but like, it did calm me down. But also, he was also kind of messing with me because he saw how visibly like shaken I was to just be there. But probably the best celebrity encounter. This is right around the time when Green Day was releasing Revolution Radio, that album. I was working late one night, and they were doing sound check because they were going on Howard Stern's show the next day. And as we all know, when you're doing sound check and you're doing full songs, sound check is just about over. I timed it where I was going to walk out of the building with them, and as we were waiting for the elevator, I pretend to be on my phone emailing, and I noticed them, and they noticed me, and I couldn't help it. I fanboyed out. I said to them, I just want to say, guys, I've been listening to you for over 20 years. You guys were my first introduction to music. I discovered the Ramones, Rancid, The Offspring, the Beatles, metal, and all these other forms of music that I love. It all started with you guys. I must have listened to Dookie a million times, and like, your music got me through a whole lot of personal issues growing up, and I just want to say thank you. I love you, and I hope Revolution Radio just kills it on the charts because you guys deserve it. I'm sure they've heard that spiel a whole bunch of times, but to their credit, Mike Dirnt, he goes, wait a minute, how long did you say you were listening to us? And I say, over 20 years. And without missing a beat, he goes, way to make us fucking feel old. And we all shared a laugh. I shook Mike Dirnt's hand, I shook Trey Cool's hand, and Billy Joe gave me a hug and said, thanks for being a fan. And I will never, ever forget that moment. That's probably, that's my favorite celebrity encounter. I love going to movie theaters. Let's just say I have the AMC Stubbs A-List subscription, and I take full advantage of my 3 movies a week. So I love going to movie theaters. I love going golfing and sucking horribly at it. My handicap is a plus 1500, so I will lose at least 100 balls on the course. I suck at it, but I love going. It's fantastic. And now that spring is here, I'm going to make an attempt to go as much as I can this year. I also really love going to car shows. One of my favorite things to do at the end of summer to cap off a summer is to go to the Lead East car show in Parsippany, New Jersey. It's usually at the Hilton. They turn the entire thing into sort of like a 1950s Comic-Con. So anything 1950s and 60s, from the cars to the old leather jacket, greaser lifestyle, oldies bands playing. My dad's group even sang a couple of years there. It's a really fun way to cap off the end of summer. It's every Labor Day weekend. And if you love classic cars, if you like anything involving oldies in the 1950s and 60s, highly suggest you go check that out, especially if you're in the greater New Jersey area. That's definitely a must attend. I mean, I'd like to retire by age 65, but in this day and age, I don't ever see that happening. I've always wanted to travel abroad, and I'm in the process of renewing my passport to do just that. My dream vacation, no financial restrictions at all. I would go to London. I'd fly into London. I would rent an Aston Martin. I would drive around the British countryside and then take the Channel Tunnel into France, Switzerland, drive down the Autobahn in Germany, and I would end my European Grand Tour in Rome before I flew home. So if I can take 2 weeks, no restrictions on money, that's what I do. A 2-week Grand Tour of Europe. Puppies, fluffy kittens. I mean, those are obvious things that instantly make anyone happy. I mean, I would question your humanity if puppies and kittens didn't make you happy. But low-key, my favorite thing, have you ever gone outside in the springtime after it rained? That smell of a grassy field after a rainstorm in the springtime, that. And bonfires. The smell of bonfires, the smell of wood burning. I love a good campfire. To me, the low-key best getaway is pitching a tent in a campground up at Lake George in upstate New York and camping right on the lake. That's a perfect weekend. It's really tough to specify heroes as to why. I've always idolized people who have been labeled outcasts, have always been the target of society's censors, and anyone who's ever been fearless with speaking their mind about something. I've always been fans of those type of people. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I worshipped Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony on the radio. I would listen to Howard in the morning on my way to school. I would listen to Opie and Anthony in the afternoons. Modern time as an adult, I discovered Top Gear, and I mean, Jeremy Clarkson is, again, just someone who doesn't give a shit what you think about him, will always say what's on his mind, has a sense of humor about a lot of things. And again, anyone who's ever been a target of society and our tendency to silence people who are different than others, I've always gravitated towards those people because they seem way more interesting than anyone who says, oh, they're dangerous. Halloween. Not so, I mean, I could be typical and say Thanksgiving and Christmas. I mean, yes, I love the traditional family holidays, but Halloween is fun. It's the one day a year where we are all encouraged to let loose, do something crazy, like going to Halloween parties is fun. And especially if you can think of a creative costume. Like one year I went to a convention called Chiller Theater, which if you're in the local New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, Chiller Theater it's basically the Comic-Con of obscure 70s through 90s horror movies, where like the big guests that they have there are the guy who played Michael Myers in the 4th Halloween movie, or the guy that was the stunt double for Chewbacca in Star Wars. Like the obscure, like you have to really know your stuff if you know these people. And of course they have a couple big guests there too. Like Alice Cooper was a big guest one year, and I had the opportunity to talk to him, and I spent the entire time talking to him about golf instead of music, because I was more interested in talking about golf than music. But one year for Halloween, it happened to fall on a Saturday where Chiller Theater was happening, and it was just set up to be the perfect Halloween. I shaved my head completely bald, and I made a Uncle Fester costume. And instead of getting a bald cap and just putting it over my head, I shaved my head completely. And we got severely intoxicated at Chiller. We partied and went around. I dressed as Uncle Fester. A couple other friends of mine went as like They just put like devil face paint on them. I went above and beyond. I shaved my head completely, and I let my friends shave my head for me. Got a lot of cuts with dollar store Bics, but they shaved my head, and I went as Uncle Fester. So I go above and beyond for Halloween. I love that holiday. It's fun, and everyone should just let loose once in a while and embrace Halloween. I'm very trusting with people. Not anymore. You could thank how I got fired at SiriusXM for that, now that I dropped that nugget. So I got let go from Sirius because I was running a YouTube channel for a show that I was working on called Busted Open. It was a show about pro wrestling, and it was morning radio. I was producing morning radio, running a YouTube page on a show talking about pro wrestling. I was working every day with WWE Hall of Famers, meeting wrestlers, meeting everyone you can imagine in the wrestling business, and that was the dream job. I got the okay to run a YouTube page, and I put my trust in my boss at the time. I didn't get it in writing that it was okay, which in hindsight was my bad, but I was naive and I put my full trust into someone without having any sort of documentation of it. And when Sirius came down and started their own video app, because why wouldn't you embrace YouTube and the #1 video site on the internet for your shows to generate engagement and get subscribers, I was unceremoniously let go because my boss threw me under the bus and covered her own ass. At the time, I took a channel that had about 4,500 subscribers, and at the time I was fired, they had about 62,000. So I built up all those subscribers in about a year and a half. I generated an entire online community with the fans on YouTube and the internet. I learned how social media algorithms worked, and I got the channel to where it is. If you sense that I'm still kind of bitter about it, you're 100% right. There is still a part of me that is 100% bitter, which again is another one of my weaknesses. I have a tendency to hold grudges longer than anyone should, and that's something about me that I'm kind of ashamed at, but also that bitterness motivates me to do better, so it's kind of sort of a double-edged sword. On one hand, I'm still pretty angry about it, but on the other, it just motivates me to do more, because I would rather relish by flipping someone off with my success than getting revenge by simply being successful. I'm the guy that I would say, "See, I told you so." Like, nothing would make me happier than saying, "See, I told you so" to people who doubt me. But again, that's just me. I mean, some people take a more humble route, but with me, those are definitely weaknesses that I'm still trying to improve on. I used to not only spike my hair, but I also used to bleach it. So because I wanted to be, I wanted to be Dexter Holland. I wanted to be the Offspring. And I also wore polyester button-down shirts that are so cringe Guy Fieri would even be embarrassed to wear them. So I used to wear the chain necklace, the cargo shorts. I literally looked like Guy Fieri in high school. And when I actually met Guy Fieri at Sirius, I showed him a picture of me at 16, and I showed it to him, and he jokingly said, "Oh my God, do I owe you royalties for stealing your look?" So like, that's how cringe I looked back then. It would have to be in the last couple of years, right? I mean, COVID ruined a lot of people's lives, and not just the virus itself with all the people it killed. People's livelihoods, their jobs, they all got rocked, and I'm no exception. I was just starting to work again from being fired from SiriusXM. I had unemployment insurance. I got fired from Sirius in June of 2019. I rode out the rest of the year on unemployment insurance and just taking breaks to just clear my head, because I was in a really toxic mindset because of what working at Sirius does to people. January 2020 happens, and I get a job photographing for a family of auto dealerships. Sure enough, 3 months after I get a job, COVID hit, and my job is gone because we're deemed non-essential. I went to New York unemployment because I still had 6 months of unemployment insurance. I went to them, I'm like, "Hey, I want to start my unemployment insurance again." And they said, "No, you got a job." So New York State unemployment denied me. I went to New Jersey unemployment, and they said, you just started working in New Jersey again after 5 years, no, you're denied unemployment insurance. And of course, I applied for any grants or any financial assistance that I could get, but I was denied for all of them because there were businesses that needed the money more than me, which I understood, but my bills were still being called to pay for, and I had to max out both of my credit cards to survive. I sunk myself maybe 10 to 12 grand in debt just paying my rent and paying for living expenses. My credit score tanked and my entire financial situation was looking bleak. My job got taken away in March. I didn't find any sort of work until maybe, I'd say, August. I was having a conversation with my landlord in August because he got really rocked with this too. And I said, do you know anyone who's looking for work? I have a camera. I can take pictures. I can do anything with a camera. And he happens to know a very well-known real estate agent in New Jersey. And he put me in touch with that real estate agent, and he hired me to be a photographer, which saved my ass financially. I was making a decent wage now. Granted, it was all 1099 independent contractor work, so I had to learn how to file my own taxes and learn how to, figure out what was a business expense versus a personal expense, all of that stuff. But I got the hang of it and I started doing quarterly taxes, even monthly taxes at this point. And that one connection with my landlord to that real estate agent, and I built a real estate photography business for myself where I'm now doing 2 to 3 listings a day in the peak summer hours. And if it wasn't for that one connection that my landlord made for me with that real estate agent, Lord knows what I would be doing now. While I was doing the real estate work, I was also working at a warehouse part-time. And one day after work, I was scrolling through the old Tinder and I found the woman who is now my girlfriend and who is also now the woman I'm going to move in with and who I want to spend the rest of my life with. So if it wasn't for COVID and everything that happened from COVID, taking my job away, sinking me into all that debt, I wouldn't have been able to say right now that I make money being my own boss. I make money being my own scheduler. I make money being my own business. And the only person I have to answer to is myself. And that is the most amazing feeling in the world that I wouldn't trade for anything. And it's also the reason why I met my girlfriend. And I am happier now than I was 4 years ago. I'm happier now than when I was ever at SiriusXM. And I am happier now than I ever could be. And it's only going to get better from here. So this video was probably way, way longer than I wanted it to be. I thought this was going to be a quick little video, but clearly it's not. So thank you guys for watching all this. And I want to end this by saying thank you again for subscribing to the channel. Again, 4,000 of you clicking that subscribe button. It's just, it really means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Thank you. More content to come. I'm very happy to be doing this for you guys. And whether a few hundred of you see the videos or a few thousand of you see the videos or a few 10,000, I mean, crap, man. The video of me setting up the music venue that kind of started this whole thing is now at 111,000 views. Like, what the hell, man? Like, this is amazing. Clearly you guys love this type of content, and I will continue to do just that for you guys. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much, and let's enjoy this ride. Catch you in the next one. Peace.